proof. Alrighty then. Wait about 5 minutes, see if anyone's come watch with us. We'll turn this chair around, get ourselves comfortable. Alright. This is gonna be fun. We got somebody in here with us. It's gonna be interesting when instead of slots, it's gonna be a bit different. Okay, this is no holds bar, uncensored. In the way I see things in this world. Hey, Roy, you're right. And once you start watching this video, you'll find out some stuff that you don't know. So we'll watch it throughout the whole thing. And see how it goes. We're gonna wait about 5 minute mark, we'll begin. Thanks, Sharon. You're gonna come watch it too, huh? It's an uncensored channel. It's more of a political channel, but if you're into that kind of stuff, that's cool. It's different. It's a different type of channel. It ain't a SWAT channel, no like that. This is the political one. Can't do SWATs right now, but I got my second channel called I Will Piss You Off, which is more of a political, uncensored channel. Alright, so let's start the video at 5 minute mark. Let's see what's going on here. I'm trying to get slots back, but I'm still having a hard time finding jobs right now. But this other channel is gonna be fun to do for a while until I find me a job. I got plans for the other channel too. I got some like old bonus videos I can post too. On the side. We got about 40 seconds to start this video, and then just get to relax and watch with you guys. Yeah, it's a lot different. It's more the political side of channels and stuff like that. If you haven't seen this documentary, it's pretty interesting. Eight minutes, we'll start it. And see what's good with this channel. Alright, 5 minute mark, begin. So we're basically just watching something, we're going to discuss it at the same time. You got that right. Media is very popular, powerful. after money. He'll get you.
Take a bill from the gentleman. The driver in there?
That blue one over there.
Step out and face away.
Please don't shoot me, Mr. Please. Don't shoot me, man.
Step out and face away.
Can you not shoot me, man?
I'm not shooting. Step out and face away.
Okay. Please, man. Please. I didn't know, man.
Get out of the car.
I didn't know, officer. I didn't know.
Jim's going home.
Hey, you come back. Stay in the car. Stop resisting, man. Yes, you are.
Find more about that later.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man. I've been trying to help out. So you can breathe a little bit more. Why don't you die this thing? Why? Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
I have decided to do this video. It has been weighing very heavily on my heart. I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. I'm going to explain why, and I hope that some of you guys will understand where I'm coming from. I want to be clear, this is not a defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice.
Okay, interview take 2.
It was just gut instinct, you know? It just felt like we were being told, look over here, and I guess part of my personality is when I feel that way and somebody's going, focus only here, I want to know, okay, but what about over there? And it wasn't personal, at least not in the beginning, it wasn't personal. I would say it certainly wasn't personal until.
This video was just so disgusting, but I think it's important to understand how easily people can be corrupted into saying this type of disgusting nonsense.
Candance Owens, that rotten bitch.
If anybody's going to pretend to get their feelings hurt about what we say about Candance Owens, I will laugh and laugh and laugh.
I don't care what this. I don't care if it personally kick Candance Owens and her stinky pussy. I don't know if it stinks, but I imagine it does.
Then at that moment, it became personal. And I thought, not only am I going to say the truth, I am going to scream the truth louder than you can scream the lies.
I never been so hurt inside.
This was the second time he exhibited that behavior.
23 out of 24 hours in this
I
cell.
have been a police officer for almost 4 decades.
Until the very breath was squeezed out of him.
That was the very last time I seen Floyd.
Sentence my son. You will also be sentenced
Every day. Every day.
I love drug addiction is even more powerful than a mother's love.
You guys know him best. So, who was George Floyd?
Outside this grocery store is now home for a memorial.
We protest peacefully. We're kind of just helping each other out and rallying together as a community.
We need to stand together with each other.
We're here to serve justice for injustice.
George Floyd.
Say his name.
George Floyd.
Breaking news in South Minneapolis. The situation has become dangerous.
Individual breaching the gate at the 3rd precinct.
Getting close to blocking the fence. Is anyone copying this?
Third precinct has been compromised.
They're about to breach the
Okay, Precision, how do you run? 3rd Precinct is up in flames.
Minneapolis is waking up to a lot of its buildings on fire.
You saw chaos erupt.
Fires are still burning.
We are seeing looting throughout the city.
Bricks are being thrown at police officers. We are seeing increasing violence amongst protesters throughout the country.
Cities are erupting into chaos and violence.
How long can you be peaceful when your people are dying?
We're out here trying to show them that we're angry.
This is not just about George Floyd. It's about everything that's happened in our world.
For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight. And it is something that I find to be despicable, and it is something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I am not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from black liberals and black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be black, is you have to say this was wrong and that this person was amazing. I won't do that. Why are we pretending that this criminal should be upheld as a citizen, as a martyr in black America? A martyr for a fake narrative, by the way.
People were shocked, right? They had all thrown themselves in emotionally based on the media narrative, and they just sort of thought, how could the media not have told us this? So right now I am researching Alvin and Teresa Scott. They were George Floyd's last known roommates, and we basically just had producers reach out and say, working on a documentary pertaining to George Floyd. That was kind of the only information that we gave them, in the hopes that saying my name would not scare them away. At least from what I'm doing a cursory search, there does not seem to be too much coverage on the roommates. Some pieces pertaining to how they were feeling during the trial, some international coverage, but I definitely don't remember these people being at the forefront. And he lived with them for over 3 years, so it'll be really interesting to see what they have to say if they speak to me and don't slam a door in my face. Fingers crossed.
Hello, Alvin Menego, and I'm George Floyd's previous roommate prior to his death. This is our house, and give you a little walkthrough and tell you a little bit about our relationship, me and Floyd. So, okay. Well, we still keep his name on the mailbox, just still gets mail. Okay. Yeah, and this is us on the 4th of July, 2017. And these are our co-workers. We both work together at the Conga Lounge in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that's Floyd right here. And they never forgot him because he was a people person. He socialized, and the kids was always, looking up like, wow, that guy's pretty tall. Floyd's about 6'7". So we can head upstairs and I'll show you where Floyd's room was. Eventually we were roommates, but when I first moved here, it was just me and Floyd, and Teresa later on moved in with us. And this was his room, much bigger, the biggest room in the house, and he was a big guy, so he always enjoyed it. And the difference was like he had a desk right here, and the only thing he always kept right there was either his Bible, and he smoked cigarettes, and that was the only thing you seen on his desk. Yeah, some good moments here. It was like we lived together almost, I guess it was about 4.5 years, almost 5 years. Yeah. Him and Teresa often read the Bible together, and that was
all of these is what he did. Like he got Proverbs marked right here. He used to read this all the time. Let me see, what else did he read? He read Matthew's right here. And so he used to be in his room, and our room was next door. And I used to hear him out loud reading his Bible all the time. And I used to be listening to him, and I'm like, wow, he really do be reading that Bible, The last day I seen Floyd, we stood up here on the top of the stairs. And this time, we prayed longer than we ever did. I think we prayed for like about 5 or 8 minutes. Usually we'll do a prayer and it's like quick and everything. But this day, we prayed longer than we ever prayed. And I said, Floyd, I'll see you when you get back, okay? He said, T, I'll be back. I said, promise me you coming back. He said, I promise I'll be back. And that was the last time I seen him. That was the very last time I seen Floyd, that day when we prayed upstairs, and I didn't see him no more after that.
Yeah, we're pretty suspicious. If you knew about
Hello,
this.
how are you? Hi, very nice to meet you, Alvin. Hey, Teresa, how are you? So you guys, in many ways, were some of the people that were the closest to him.
Yes.
And I don't remember seeing your faces on the news or anybody talking to you, so I guess let's just start with that. When was the first time you met George?
Oh, well, I first met him in 2017. We ended up knowing each other. He was in the treatment center, and I actually was there too, but I was there for the alcohol, and he was having problems with the pain pills. So when we met, we was unaware that this was, we both was in the same situation.
So you guys met, and you figured out that you were going to the same treatment center, and I think, did that probably establish an instant connection between you two?
Because, during that time, you talk about a lot of things that led you to where you were, and you get an idea of who the persons that are around you, more one-on-one. And he was real open about, things he was going through and what he wanted to be. And his whole dream was to get his life together, and have a good job and be able to take care of his daughter as well as his family.
He wants a fresh start, and he wanted to do better, and he happens to run into you, and this is a beautiful home.
The Floyd that I knew in this house was a good person. And if he did do something bad, he hid it from us. He didn't do it around us. If he did it out there, he did it out there. That's his business. It's not mine.
Addiction is hard.
Yes.
It's full stop hard.
Right.
But family is different. It's a different part of them, and so the struggles that they're maybe facing out on the street is just not something that they ever want to bring to their doormat,
And that was Floyd. I mean, if he did have addiction out there, he left it in the streets. He never brought it home.
Sometimes a little urge to get something stronger to kill the pain, took over, but he always fought against that.
He was talking to me. He said, T. He said, I do whatever the police tells me to do. He said, because they looking to kill a big brother like me.
Yeah.
He said that out of his own words. He said, because a big ear like me, he said, they looking to kill a big brother like me. And sure enough, that's what happened.
It was kind of
like weeks and stuff later,
that was one of his
it happened.
fears.
Yep, that was one of his
That's
fears.
interesting though, because what you're saying is that, so that night he did whatever he was supposed to, whatever they told him to do, because he knew
He knew that they was intimidated by him because he was so big.
And I'm sure that officer probably know who he is that ran his life. They got it in the computer.
But what about, do you think that if he had complied, because I'm sure you guys have seen the full tape by now, right? Mm-hmm. And you must be thinking, woulda, coulda, shoulda, if he had that mentality going into it, let me just do what they're saying, and, because it's just such an escalation when you see the full tape of, yeah, he's not, maybe because he's not feeling too good, but yeah, and then he's like, put me on the ground, when he says, put me on the ground. You ever look at it and go, man, I wish that time he had taken his own advice and just been like, okay guys, take me wherever you want to take me.
Yes.
Do you think that a lot of people maybe came out of the woodwork because there was an opportunity, to grandstand, to be on stage, to, a lot of money got thrown around, which is part of what I'm exploring in this documentary. I mean, Black Lives Matter Global Network came out and said we raised $90 million plus, and they did this with his face. Just his face, or saying you had some association with him, could have gotten, garnered a lot of people money. Do you think that people took advantage of him?
Yeah, it's like they use it as what you say, a way of funding whatever they motivation was. And then at sometimes when I went to the George Floyd Memorial, it was different individuals going around there saying donations for this, for Floyd, for this, and you didn't know where they was coming from. You got a little metal box, and I don't know who you are. Where is this going?
president and the vice president, and for them to show their concern to our family, and for them to actually give an ear to our concerns and how we feel on the situation.
I have to be strong, because that's what he wanted me to do.
I ain't never met a sister. I ain't never met a brother. None of them ever came here. And Floyd been living in this house. We've been in this house going on 6 years, am I right?
Yeah. But for the 4 years, no. He just...
They never wanted his stuff. I mean, I would think that if my
They didn't
son,
even come and look and see where the man lived at. They never came to see where Floyd lived. They never came and get none of his stuff. Nothing.
That was my oldest brother. I love him. I'm never gonna get my brother back.
I would like to just, like, say one day, meet his daughter, because it's like, that's an extension of him.
Right.
That I, just to be proud to just see one
Well,
time.
not his daughter. Now we found out he got more.
Well, they found out that wasn't true.
So you mean 3 kids came that ain't his?
Just one. I think they did a DNA check, and the boy's not his, and the other girl.
Are you serious?
Rumors, I don't know.
that's we gotta leave that to Maury. I don't do that. I don't do paternity. That's Maury's stuff. That's not what we do here.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
You guys, thank you so much. It was what a pleasure to sit here and talk to you guys. It was just absolutely amazing. You imagine how absolutely traumatized that child was. And then you think to yourself, just a few years later, and you will have children that are wearing his shirt, referring to him as a hero, as some sort of savior, right? That's wrong. It's not right at all. And it was this case that I couldn't stay quiet on, and I had to make that video. In 1998, he spent 10 months in prison for theft with a firearm. In 2002, he spent 8 months in prison for a cocaine offense. In 2004, just 2 years later, he spent another 10 months in prison for a cocaine offense. By the way, I am not saying that if you have a record, you don't deserve a second chance. I do draw the line when it comes to second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth chances.
Two things can be true at once. You can both say that George Floyd didn't deserve to die, no matter how you believe he died. Nobody deserves to die, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
And you can also say that objectively, this person that did die was not a saint. This person was not an angel.
Not at all.
Okay, so my producer just sent me a link and a minute mark for George Floyd's 2019 arrest, which I haven't seen, so I'm about to watch it for the first time.
Okay, Floyd, come on out. Come on, man.
Okay, this is super interesting because he's saying mama again, and obviously I know that throughout the trial his girlfriend testified that he calls her mama, and the media made such a big deal saying that when he died he cried out for his mama, and they clearly misinterpreted that because this is a 2019 arrest. He's once again saying I want mama. That seems pretty clear that he's talking about his girlfriend, and he's not crying out for his mother, which was a nice victim narrative.
You and Floyd, Mr. Floyd, excuse me, I'm assuming like most couples had pet names for each other?
Yeah.
And what were you saved in his phone as?
Mama.
What's crazy in the retrospect is to realize that everybody reacted. Nobody knew who George Floyd was, but also nobody knew who Derek Chauvin was.
Twisted. Twisted as hell.
Literally nothing. Like, I mean, my heart breaks for her, obviously, like hearing, like she's obviously just devastated, but she's being told by his lawyer to say absolutely nothing. So she's not gonna come on camera, she's not gonna participate, he's not gonna come on camera or participate because they have a pending appeal. And my frustration and what I expressed to her is I'm just like, so your strategy for the appeal is the same thing that your strategy was during the entire trial. Silence. Allow the media to tell the story. And I said to her, I literally said, this might be the only opportunity that you guys have, right? You've already lost in the court of public opinion. So how is it going to hurt you? He's lost, right? How is it going to hurt you to allow his voice to be heard and to tell the story from his side? Nothing. Like, the lawyer's running the show, and to be honest, I think it's the worst strategy. There's just no way he's going to win in the court of public opinion by saying nothing, you know? Like, super frustrating, but that's a dead end, so. I can't imagine raising up a child and loving a child and knowing who he is and watching the media in virtually minutes be able to strip that person of their identity and to create a new identity for them. I felt her pain. I did. I felt her pain, and I felt that the only thing we could offer to do was to expand on who Derek Chauvin actually was. People were taking a picture, not even a picture, a still from a video, and saying, Satan, this is your Satan. People were taking a storyline that was given to them from the media and saying, here it is, George Floyd, he's your hero. That's it, that's the story, the end. It's insane. You know Derek Chauvin.
I do. I was a Minneapolis police officer for 31 years.
Is it the same Derek Chauvin that the media has introduced the world to?
Not at all. Derek is quiet, somewhat quirky, not a big guy, very dependable, shows up to work every day. Derek is the kind of guy that you want to show up on your calls with you. He's very level-headed.
Derek, when I first supervised Derek, I was a sergeant, and I was running a unit for Homeland Security. Derek got assigned onto my unit, and at the time he was living with his mom, which I thought was admirable, that he wanted to help take care of his mom.
Derek is a quiet, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless man. He has a big heart, and he always has put others before his own.
He was kind of a guy that was a little more of a loner. You know, some probably would have considered him socially awkward.
You described him as quirky, and somebody else kind of described him in that same way. What do you mean by that?
Kind of quiet, introverted. Sometimes he wears his uniform pants a little high on his boots. Just that way. You know,
maybe not the quarterback of the football team.
Not the quarterback of the football team.
Okay. Did he ever have any issues with other police officers? Was there ever any signs that he was particularly violent or had issues with people because of their skin color?
No, never. No, that is not the Derek I knew. And I don't believe what people are saying. It's made up. It's not true.
When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me. Plus the fact that when he is released, his father and I most likely will not be here.
Where is Derek today?
Derek is at Oak Park Heights Prison. He sits in a cell for 24 hours a day. He does not have any reading materials, no TV, no computer, no nothing. He just sits in the cell. And that's it. You sit and look at the four walls in your cell every single day.
What was your initial reaction when you saw that video in terms of looking up and seeing, hey, that's Derek Chauvin, I know that guy?
He's somebody that would be hard to read for most people, but nice guy.
So when you looked up at his face, you didn't see a monster, you just saw Derek looking as Derek has always looked, and the media perhaps reading into it.
They read into something that was not there. That is not the Derek that I knew. All of our department was painted with that same brush, which is unfair, and it's a lot of false narrative, because we have a good department.
And we heard earlier that he is spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. Do you ever think about his mental state?
Every day. Every day.
You don't wish that on anybody. There's an incredible amount of stress in the job alone. More or less, if somebody dies in your custody, that's about the worst thing that you can go through as a person and a police officer.
George Floyd was a semi-regular customer. He'd come around not so often, but he was someone we'd recognize, and he'd come here maybe to pay his phone bill or get phone services. So anytime a customer brings a counterfeit bill, and you see we have plenty of them, we tell them, hey, this is counterfeit. If the customer insists, then we call the police, and then the police has to ask them where they got it from. And that really hasn't ever happened. In my experience here, whenever we tell a customer that the bill is counterfeit, they immediately leave because they don't want to be involved with it. Just from our experience, yeah, there's some good ones, but a lot of times we know right away that they're fake just because of the way they have the color disfiguration, or the way they feel, the way they look. So usually we don't call the police on counterfeit money because when we tell the customer that it's fake, they accept the fact and just leave. When he came in the store, he was with a friend of his. The friend of his was paying for some electronics repair, and all of the money he had was counterfeit. Because we knew the person, we told him, hey, we're not going to call the police, just take this money back and don't bring it back here again. And then a few minutes later, George Floyd made a purchase in the tobacco shop with a counterfeit bill, and the employee then called the police. They arrived about 45 minutes later and found George Floyd in his car, and that's when they approached him.
Hey, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Ron Martinelli, forensic criminologist and certified medical investigator and police practices expert. Let me just preface this. I have no dog in the fight here, all right? We classically get a lot of officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, but we take them from all sides. So my advocacy is for facts and evidence, not for people or entities. So if the officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing as they were trained to do it, I'm going to tell you. If they're not, I'm also going to tell you that.
What was your assessment of the police behavior in seeing the full video and seeing how things played out?
They made contact with Mr. Floyd, and that is totally appropriate because they're investigating a third person's report of criminality.
Not moving. Put your hands behind your back then. Stop resisting, man. Stand up.
Please, man.
Stand up.
Why are you doing me like this?
Stand up. Come on. We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car.
So for the officers, what they have to do is they have to begin an investigation to ask him probative questions, seeking more evidence to determine whether a crime has occurred.
All right, what's your name? George. We're here because it sounds like you gave a fake bill to the individuals in there.
Yeah.
So once they put the handcuffs on Mr. Floyd should have known, albeit he's under the influence of drugs,
You want something right now? No, nothing. Because you acting real erratic.
that he must obey the officer's directions, orders, and commands. He cannot resist arrest.
I hear you, but you are going to face the door right now. Listen up, stop.
Oh, listen.
Please, take a seat. I'm going in. I'm going. No, you're not.
And so when Mr. Floyd gets in the car and he claims that he's claustrophobic,
Right. Claustrophobic is exactly what he said.
I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
I think if I was an officer, I'd be saying, wait a minute, you showed up in a car. You wouldn't get in a car if you thought you were claustrophobic. The officers placed him in a position that's referred to as the maximum restraint position. In other words, he's prone, stomach down, on the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
Good morning. We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent. On May 25th of 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him.
You would agree, Chief, that from the perspective of Miss Frazier's camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee is on the neck of Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Would you agree that from the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see if we can fix this up.
They had to have the jury believe that it was a neck restraint, it was the knee on the neck, it was asphyxiation that killed George Floyd. However, there was a ton of evidence that George Floyd consumed a toxic, lethal cocktail of fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"?
Yes. Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me. And so they had to continuously inculcate the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd, and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it. As Lindsay and the toxicologist presented that awful testimony.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances, it would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due to fentanyl toxicity.
I know I can't breathe. 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 Come on out.
The autopsy is generally broken down by, number one, how the body is presented, and what his height and weight is, and then it goes through the neurological system, exterior trauma, interior trauma, but I go right to the cardiovascular system. And there I look at the heart weight. How much does the heart weigh? And then I take a look for key words. I compare the heart weight to the height and weight of the individual, to what the toxicology report says, and I look for certain words or evidence of something called cardiomegaly. Cardiomegaly means an enlarged heart. And if a person has cardiomegaly, their chances of sudden cardiac arrest rise by 150 times, not 150%, 150 times. That is significant. And then we have the whole issue of the police encounter and the basal metabolic rate rising. Think about him being agitated, chaotic, excited, and his heart is pumping, pumping, pumping. There is zero empirical forensic evidence, medical evidence of any biological mechanism, physiological mechanism that would have interfered with George Floyd's ability to get sufficient oxygenated blood up into the brain. There's zero evidence of that.
There was another passenger in the vehicle, and that passenger was Mr. Floyd's drug dealer. However, he did not end up providing helpful testimony because of his own criminal liability.
Okay, and why would you not answer those?
I'm fearful of criminal charges going forward. I have open charges that's not settled yet of my personal stuff.
So basically you are invoking your Fifth Amendment right against compelled self-incrimination?
Yes, sir.
There was some evidence that came out of chewed up pills that were found on the floor of the police car. It's very unclear to me why that evidence was not obtained earlier and presented to the jury. But I think if the jury had seen the entire picture, not only of Mr. Floyd's drug dependency, his multiple prior brushes with law enforcement, but his physical characteristics at the time of the incident and his ultimate death. Absent the interaction with the police, he could easily have died with the amount of drugs in his system with no knee on his neck or on his shoulder. And so to me that would have suggested, if I were on that jury, reasonable doubt, but our system is such that a jury gets to decide that. Now there were other factors I think that polluted the jury's ultimate ruling. You know, ultimately the jury reached its conclusion.
I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view.
We've got to get more confrontational, make sure that they know that we mean business.
I want to see the charge of the arresting officer take place. We are not talking about a split-second decision that was made incorrectly. I can't see coming to a different answer there. Thank you.
Real quickly, have you seen the body camera footage yourself?
No, I have not yet.
The verdict is in the case that has riveted the nation, the trial of Derek Chauvin. The former Minneapolis police officer was found guilty today of killing George Floyd last May.
I just want to thank the prosecutors. I just want to thank God, the DNA, everybody. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
And I hope every killer cop is watching and paying attention, because today the Black Lives Matter movement served notice on you.
Oh, really?
There's a viciousness, there's almost a bloodthirst when one of these cases comes around. And nobody looks back, nobody asks any questions, nobody says sorry. It's just, you are being sacrificed so we can build this temple of Black Lives Matter. And there are so many individuals who deserve to have their story told. So Liz, I want to start with you. So being an anchor and having that position, how did you juggle being married as well to a police officer in terms of covering stories?
Well, I went to our management right away, before I even went on a date with Bob, as a matter of fact, to tell them that I was thinking about going on a date with this person at the time. And I said, ethically, I don't feel comfortable covering police union issues. And that was something that management was totally fine with.
So you mentioned that you were getting threats on Twitter, and I'm assuming that's where it began. Can you talk a little about what those threats were?
I think they started immediately, within, I think, hours of the actual incident. They said that Bob Kroll and Liz Collin will be dead by the time the year ends. They came to the station where I worked and held a protest during the 6 o'clock news, demanding that I be fired for being married to a police officer. Yeah. I'm seeing this story from so many different lenses, as a wife, as a journalist, but as a mom, I think it's where it hit me the hardest.
I can imagine.
In the early days, I'm calling friends, hey, can you take Anthony? We have another death threat, or my parents are watching him for a few days. He doesn't know what's going on. I mean, you can't even explain this stuff to adults, nonetheless. A 7-year-old child, and he happened to see a little clip of the news in the early days and said, wait a minute, so the police made a mistake and they're stealing stuff from Target? In his little mind, he knew that this did not make sense. This isn't okay. So this was a Black Lives Matter organized protest. 100 people were there, and we were out of town. After that happened, I sent an email to our newsroom, and I said, this seems newsworthy. There was a state rep candidate there that was beating me in effigy. They made piñatas of Bob and I dressed as Klansmen.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Slow down here. You're telling me that they made piñatas of you in effigy and they beat them?
With bats.
John Thompson did with a stick.
In our driveway. This is the man running to be a state representative in Minnesota.
In your driveway.
Overwhelmingly elected.
Bob Pro, if anybody will support his racist ass. Bob Pro, I said it.
I mean, it was horrendous, absolutely awful. And I got in trouble for pitching that as a story. We had reporters tweeting their alliance with Black Lives Matter using that hashtag after this movement, talking about it's okay to align yourself with this group and supporting Black Lives Matter. And that was fine. But I was no longer wanted there, and that was pretty clear.
What was the process of making these?
I mean, if you've ever been so angry you wanted to make a piñata, that's where I'm at. Just f them. Just absolutely f them. That's where I'm at.
So when did you make the decision to leave?
My contract was up in January of this last year, and I've been blackballed in the market.
If I can interject, they were successful in destroying her career because she had a wonderful career trajectory going. She's a small town, Worthington, Minnesota local. She was a local favorite. She was the primary fill-in for the two main anchors. She had a weekend anchor. The ratings that they had were huge. Everybody loved her. And then all of a sudden, this twist. So I watched it destroy her and destroy her career, something that she's very good at and a lot better, quite frankly, than some of her competitors or her replacements.
My name is Fraser Ross, and I own retail stores in Los Angeles, California.
During the George Floyd protests that swept the nation, what happened?
We were looted for over $400,000 worth of merchandise.
Wow.
It was a disaster.
You then went online, and what did you observe that you thought was out of the ordinary?
Chrissy Teigen had posted on her Instagram, I'll help the protesters get out of jail. Then she said, well, let me up it to another 100,000. Now, when you have approximately 30 million followers at the time, you can start a movement, and people say, oh, well, she's going to bail me out and everything. And then, you've got celebrities like Jennifer Garner giving 4 hearts to that post. Well, they all live in gated communities, and it's not their stuff being destroyed.
And you had just been looted.
Yeah, I went online and posted an Instagram of the store being looted, and I tagged, thanks, Chrissy. She wrote under this post, well, like anyone's really shopped there for 10 years.
So her instinct after seeing that your store had been actually looted, her response is, well, no one shops at your store anyway. So she was not sympathetic to the victim in this circumstance.
Not one bit. But Jen Atkins was actually worse.
Jen Atkins, she's a friend of Chrissy Teigen. You tagged her in this post because you sell her products. She comments on this post as well, basically saying, use the shampoo to clean up the graffiti.
And my looting cream comes out in October.
So they're having fun.
They're mocking the looting. Right. You should be in federal prison if you're inciting violence with that many people following you.
So Dana decides to jump in and call you and Kitson a racist store because you were upset that your store was looted.
Yeah.
This made you a racist somehow.
Right.
So this was quite literally blaming the victim. Then what happened?
She sends a DM saying, well, before we get on the phone, you're going to have to apologize to Chrissy Teigen, and then I'll take down the post.
Dana Omari, from her Instagram account, wrote exactly this. You need to make a formal public apology for blaming a woman of color, she was referring to Chrissy Teigen, for your store being looted. And Chrissy needs to be named. In this apology, you should mention it was insensitive to place the blame on a single person, and that the true cause of the riots is the mishandling of police brutality toward George Floyd and the Black community as a whole. You should also say that while you are devastated by the looting of your store, you recognize it comes from a place of privilege to be concerned about replaceable items when others are protesting for their rights to live. If you apologize, I will happily remove all posts concerning your store. How does that sound? So this blogger just to recap, has essentially jumped in on behalf of Chrissy Teigen.
Right. So we got on the phone for 53 minutes, and most of the conversation was, you need to apologize to Chrissy Teigen. I said, I'm not apologizing to her. There's no reason to apologize to Chrissy Teigen. But what are you looking for? Are you looking for money? I was worried that how aggressive they were, and the looting was still approaching, and my main store, the value in that store is much greater than the store that got looted.
Right, so because she's publicly posted your store
Right.
as being owned by a racist,
Right.
concerned that they're going to come loot you some more. Who was the check written out to?
Act Blue.
To Act Blue.
Right, which
Okay.
is BLM.
Black Lives Matter. So
Right.
she was basically saying, if you make a donation to Black Lives Matter.
I'll take down the post.
Okay.
And then after she got out the conversation with me, she texts me from a phone number, and if you don't make the donation, I'm going to repost this. I'm going to make another post, an unfortunate post that won't be good.
So let me ask you a question. Chrissy Teigen, Jen Adkin, a blogger in which they both follow. Why do you think they felt the need to get involved on such a level and to be so supportive of the looting?
Well, I think there was a side that they felt that it would help them become relevant and heroes and everything.
Did Dana mention anything to you about Chrissy Teigen and her having a relationship?
Yes, she said Chrissy Teigen thanked me for what she did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she thanked the blogger
Yes.
for calling you a racist.
Yes.
And I guess having an outrage
Yes.
mob
Yes.
descend on you online.
Yes.
My name is Charles and I grew up in Kenya.
How long have you lived in Minneapolis?
I came to Minneapolis in May of 1997, so it's been 27 years.
27 years. What was this city before the George Floyd riots?
Well, it was just a typical Midwestern city with low crime and hardworking people, and we just lived here and enjoyed life together.
Yeah. And then things took a bit of a turn, and this is something different, would you say?
Well, what we saw was like a venting of anger. It was complete opposite of Minnesota nice. And we saw anger, mayhem, looting, destruction of property, burning of police precincts, and it was completely foreign to me. I'm used to something like this in third world countries, but not in America, and quite honestly, not in Minnesota.
Not in Minnesota. This is something that I think I've never seen before in any city that I've lived in, at least. It says, you are now entering the free state of George Floyd. What does that mean?
It means this is an autonomous zone, and it operates outside the laws of the United States. And anything that happens here is run by a community, and they do whatever they want.
They do whatever they want. How is that allowed in the United States?
The city of Minneapolis has been negotiating.
Negotiating with whom?
With the community.
Wow. So the city is being held hostage by the community that is running the autonomous zone. Do I have that understood?
That's correct.
Wow. So we are now entering a state where really anything goes, right? Really sort of anything goes, right?
Well, I think anything goes here. We've seen death. We've seen a man shot right in front of us. We've seen a woman who was pregnant shot right in front of us. And right here, we had a huge bus, like a school bus, and it was a clinic. It was a medical clinic. And the number one thing they were treating during the time of the riots was gunshot wounds right here.
As I'm looking around, there's so many empty shops on the block, things that are boarded up. How does that make you feel to see that? Is there ever going to be life again on this street?
Well, I feel like there has been a tremendous loss of the way of life here has changed, the economy, the destruction of businesses. Most of the businesses here that were destroyed, the insurance would not be able to cover that.
Right.
And so it's a hard thing for people to rebuild themselves, especially after what they went through.
It almost seems like a vigil is being kept here.
Well, this is pretty much the body of George Floyd. This is where he lay dead. Breathed his last right here.
Right. And so the idea is that no one should enter. This is sort of a sacred place. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can see this. Pretty much a holy ground.
Now, you're a pastor, so I just wanted to ask you, how does it make you feel, right? Knowing obviously who George Floyd was and how he lived his life, to see that this has been transformed into a holy ground, you know, as if this is where Jesus Christ took his last breath.
Well, we have better people to follow. Of course, Jesus Christ, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who have lived their lives and epitomized what we would like to emulate.
Right, right. And how does it make you feel when you hear leaders, you know, saying that the death of George Floyd is more significant than Martin Luther King?
It's outrageous.
I guess I would have assumed when Black Lives Matter announced that they raised over $90 million, who knows how much over, on the back of the George Floyd riots and the sprees. Where is that money?
I don't know. It's not here. Everything looks worse than it was.
Is it possible that Black America was sort of used as a front, and the emotions that Black America was feeling was used as a front, and this money went probably maybe not to Black people at all, anywhere in the world?
So many elements of people who took advantage of the death of George Floyd to stir up the emotions for political gain, for financial gain, and to propagate division, because some of these organizations that raise money, they can only get money if they propagate hatred and division. They are not helping the community. They are helping themselves.
Vicky.
Where have you seen that money impacted throughout the city?
Democratic politics. I mean, that's...
We shared this place, right?
Pretty much.
And we wouldn't have on everything, you know, the rent, light, gas. So when it happened to Floyd, everything fell back on me and Alvin. So
You got a car out there, it's just sitting there. We couldn't do nothing with it because we don't have the title. They won't take it or move it.
It is just shocking to me because of how much money was raised to think that where he lived, the bills weren't being covered. So Black Lives Matter released their 990 IRS filings, and of course, I wanted to jump right into it and find out exactly what happened to the approximate $80 million that was raised by them between July 1st of 2020 and June 30th, 2021. Okay, Vivek, so during the George Floyd death and the aftermath, you were in Silicon Valley, is that correct?
Yeah, I was running a biotech company, actually, and I was CEO at the time, that's right.
What was the corporate reaction in Silicon Valley?
There was a pledge of allegiance to one cause, to turn this man, who had died in a tragic death, no doubt, into some type of new modern messiah figure. And I thought that the religious quality of every company bending the knee was a bit odd, and I was actually pretty keen on making sure that I didn't lie to my employees, that I didn't tell them something that I didn't believe about this. I sent an employee all email, and I said, look, I understand there's racial riots across the country, or there's unrest across the country. I hope everybody's safe. Let us know if you need us to support you. That was about it. And I remembered the reaction that I got. that somehow that failed to meet the moment because I didn't recite the same ritual incantation that every other CEO was pledging allegiance to across the country, a corporate statement made by the same PR firm that effectively ended in Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been sort of investigating throughout this documentary, where did the money go that was given to Black Lives Matter? We never even really got a full answer of how much money was given.
I often say that BLM now stands for Buy Lavish Mansions, because that's what the BLM movement does. You actually saw in recent weeks there was a person who was effectively working for BLM that personally purchased a mansion, and she pays $3 million for it. Within days, like I think it's 48 hours later, flips that to the BLM organization, who pays nearly $6 million for that same house, booking a personal profit to the person who actually bought it. So that's a self-dealing transaction that enriches personally somebody who's working for Black Lives Matter. Why is BLM buying big lavish mansions in the first place?
When their donors were understandably outraged by the luxurious purchase, Patrisse Cullors came forth and also admitted that she hired both her mother and her brother to work at the property. What sort of work, you ask? Well, Patrisse Cullors' brother, Paul Cullors, is a graffiti artist by trade. That's what he's done his entire life. He's done graffiti. Patrisse instead hired her brother to do security for her. She paid Paul $840,000. That's almost $1 million in just 1 year to her graffiti artist brother, his newly established security firm. Now, that makes her a great sister, but perhaps she's an even better baby mama because Patrisse also gave funding from Black Lives Matter to take care of the man who fathered her son. His name is Damon Turner, and he received $970,000 from BLM to his company Trap Heels LLC, which purportedly provided live production and media. So that makes Patrisse a great sister, a wonderful baby mama, and also, by the way, she's a fun mom. Because one of the events that Patrisse organized at her BLM mansion was for her young son's birthday party. Nothing says taking on police brutality quite like hosting a birthday party for your young son in a Los Angeles mansion paid for by donors to the cause. Patrisse likes parties, by the way, because she also threw a party there to celebrate the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And yeah, that's somewhat suspicious, because what do Democrats have to do with Black Lives Matter?
Good question.
I think I'll just leave that question open-ended. Also suspicious is the fact that Black Lives Matter designated a whopping $8 million to an out-of-country grant. What? I thought this charity was about addressing police brutality in the United States. Apparently, to do that, you need to send $8 million to Toronto, Canada, to an organization named M4BJ. They purchased a $6.3 million, 10,000 square foot downtown property in Toronto. And I should also mention that M4BJ is run by Patrisse's wife, Janaya Khan. Because it is. She is the co-founder, believe it or not. And here's where it gets really interesting. Janaya Khan is gender non-conforming. These terms can be quite sensitive, so let me just use photos to illustrate my point. Janaya used to look like this, and now she looks like this. Now that information would be entirely irrelevant if it wasn't for the way that Patrisse Cullors saw it fit to spend the rest of Black Lives Matter's money. Ready for some BLM pride? Well, according to their IRS form, $200,000 went to the Transgender Justice Funding Project. Another $200,000 went to the Transgender United Fund. Another $200,000 went to the Transgendered Law Center. Another $200,000 went to Black Transgendered Media. Another $200,000 went to the Transgendered Variant and Intersex Justice Project. Another $200K went to the Transgendered District. By the way, if you're wondering what that is purportedly going to be all transgendered district, and I guess that's really, really important for Black America advancement in society, I guess, or whatever. Another $200K went to the St. James Infirmary. That organization, by the way, is for, according to their website, it's run by sex workers and is for them. Specifically, escorts, BDSM workers, strippers, peep show workers, phone sex operators, and webcam performers. it was actually the St. James Infirmary that created the transgendered district. So that's just an organization within another organization, which, by the way, you see a lot of when you go through these documents. So yeah, going to be apparently great big things involving sex workers in the future for Black America. In continuation, the Center for Halstead received $200,000 from Black Lives Matter. They are Chicago's community center dedicated to securing the health and well-being of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and queer people of Chicago. Similarly, we have the Audre Lorde Project, which received $200,000, and according to their website, they are a lesbian, gay, bisexual, two-spirit, trans, and gender nonconforming people of color community organizing center. Another $400,000 went to Transgender Advocates Knowledgeable Empowering, or TAKE, as it's known for short. The founder of that organization is a transgendered individual by the name of Darrenisha Duncan Boyd. Darrenisha is also the executive director of the Transgendered United Fund, which I mentioned earlier, which secured $200,000. So a total $600,000 of BLM money went to a transgendered woman named Darrenisha Boyd, who is operating two charities. I found that piece to be very interesting. Here is Darrenisha describing in a 2020 interview how they were able to use that money that was received to the organization to purchase more real estate.
We're opening up a new resource center here, and the resource center is almost 3 times as big as our last space that we was in. So we have lots of space and lots of rooms for our clients to come in and enjoy.
I noticed that real estate seems to be a common theme amongst these transgendered organizations. Remember, there's the first ever transgender district, and there are also a couple of houses that are named on their IRS documents. For example, an additional $200,000 was given to the House of Tulip. According to their website, the House of Tulip provides zero-barrier housing to trans and gender non-conforming people. But the one that really stood out as the most nonsensical is the $200,000 that went to the Griffin Gracie Retreat and Educational Center, known as House of Gigi for short. According to that website, they provide services and resources that positively impact the lives, history, and visibility of transgender, gender questioning, and gender non-conforming persons. They admit that they purchased a property in Little Rock, Arkansas back in 2019, and that property was supposed to serve as an oasis and a retreat for transgendered person, but they admit, also on the website, that they actually never held such a retreat. First, because their founder had a stroke and was recovering, and then it was COVID-19, so they still couldn't host a retreat. And despite having never hosted a retreat at this amazing oasis property that they purchased, in 2021, they announced that they purchased a second property next door to the first one. So, yeah. Now, all of the organizations that I just mentioned, none of them, not one, is up to date on filing a tax return with the IRS, which is required for charities. Because charities, remember, they don't pay taxes. In other words, I'm not able to tell you how any of these transgendered organizations spent the money that BLM poured into their organizations during the 2020 and 2021 tax year. If you continue to look through BLM IRS docs, you'll notice that they gave millions of dollars to various Black Lives Matter organizations throughout America, or at least at first glance it appears that they did. A closer look, you'll see that they actually dispersed that funding to organizations that were in care of Black Lives Matter. This means that actually another organization is accepting the donation on behalf of BLM. So I decided to investigate that further, and I noticed a really bizarre pattern. A lot of those organizations train activists. They train the youth to become activists in their communities. One organization even goes as far as bragging on their website about their history of getting arrested, protesting, and they offer courses on various techniques like bird dogging. That's a technique that's used to confront politicians. I thought to myself, it's interesting because I kept hearing over and over again while filming this documentary that people felt as though the protesters that arrived throughout these cities weren't actually from the cities that they arrived in. They didn't know where they had come from. I don't know, buses, there was this idea that buses were showing up filled with protesters. It's a fair question then. Is it plausible that Patrice was giving money to groups that were creating protesters, or training activists rather? I mean, why else would Patrice give millions of dollars to so many trained activists? I wanted to investigate that piece a little further, and so I made some phone calls. So I want to call some of these groups today, pretend that I want to give money to the organization, and see what I can find out about what they do. I get the feeling that none of these multi-million-dollar organizations are gonna pick up the phone.
We are not able to take your call. The Google subscriber you have called is not available.
No response.
You have the wrong number. Thanks, and goodbye.
What?
Please leave a message after the tone.
No one's available.
Your call cannot be completed.
Verizon Wireless.
The Google subscriber you have called is not available.
The number you have reached is not available.
Hello, this is Nikki. I am the co-coordinator of development and communications. It's the boots on the ground place, the place where the seeds are sown for the movement to continue to grow.
How are you guys involved actively, not just in, we want to know how you are actually active?
Yes, we are trainers, we are healers, we are artists, we are creators, but most importantly, we are on the front lines. Fighting for freedom differently through education.
This is great. Obviously, we were, like I said, we gave millions and millions of dollars after the horrific killing of George Floyd. If we give your organization $1 million and something like that happens, right? How are you getting involved?
In the past, has provided movement support and accompaniment on the front line at protests. We have supported bail funds. We have supported pop-up workshops. We are not only keeping people prepared by preparing their minds for the movement, but we're also putting them in community with spiritual workers and with other educators on the ground during those protest efforts, along with made a significant gift for the specific purpose of bailing out protesters during the 2020 uprising.
That's so wonderful.
One of our economics and governance organizers who works for was actually arrested in Kentucky as part of a protest, and we have been standing with her throughout that work and been showing up for court dates and passing the court and offering her legal support. So
that's what we want to see. That's what we're looking for. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time. I hope you have a good day.
You too. Thank you so much. Training activists, making sure that people's minds are poisoned and that they know that they're supported through bailing out. We will bail you out. We've got the money to bail you out. And that's kind of what this is all about. The investigation continues. Now, the organization that received the biggest grant from Black Lives Matter, according to their filing, is an organization called Living Through Giving Foundation. The Living Through Giving Foundation, per their mission statement, strives to connect people through organized acts of love. They run a program called #LunchBag. This program allegedly brings people together to create bag lunches in which they write handwritten love notes. And then they distribute the bagged lunches to local communities. That sounds nice, right? I thought so too. I thought to myself, I want to attend one of these events, but when I went to their website, there were no upcoming events. And when I went to the website to explore past events and learn more about the original givers, I was met with a coming soon page. So I wondered, who is the executive director of this organization that accepted $2.3 million from Black Lives Matter Global Foundation? Of course, when I went to the IRS website, they also had neglected to file an up-to-date return, but there was a name at least, and that name was AJ Reeland, listed as the executive director. AJ owns 3 coffee shops in California. You'd have to imagine my surprise, though, when I found an article about his coffee shop opening in 2019, and buried within the piece was a picture of none other than Patrisse Cullors, sitting there with her friends having coffee. In 2019, meaning Patrisse Cullors had a relationship with A.J. Reeland that predates the George Floyd protest. So exactly why did she transfer BLM money to her old friend A.J. via his charity that is nothing more than really a splash page with no upcoming events? Is she a part owner of those coffee shops? Is she an investor? I will leave that as the $2.3 million question. What I can say for certain is that you don't just send your non-black friend $2.3 million just because. Perhaps most hilariously, you'll recall that the founders of Black Lives Matter pride themselves on being abolitionists. They want to abolish the old systems of white supremacy, the systems which keep Black America away from garnering our true generational wealth and financial freedom in this horrible country, which makes it somewhat odd that they invested $32 million into the stock market. Wall Street, what a great way to abolish the system of white supremacy. Invest in stocks. I think that the IRS docs in the end lead to more questions than they do answers. And if you were an individual who gave to this organization, a well-meaning individual who gave because you thought it was going to help Black America, then you should get answers to those questions. So we are headed to Laurel Canyon. We've yet to see any Black people in this neighborhood. There were a ton of cyclists coming through. Not that's an issue, but it just seems a bit strange because the Black Lives Matter messaging, of course, has been that Black people cannot be safe in white spaces. So it's an unusual decision to buy a home in a neighborhood that doesn't have any Black faces and is surrounded by what we've been told are violent white people that don't want to see Black Americans become better. So hopefully, as we are heading out to the house, we'll be able to speak to somebody on the property. Is this a creative space for Black Americans? Why did we purchase this property with the money that was raised on the faces of so many dead Black people? I'm assuming it's going to be a welcoming environment. We'll see. So there's definitely somebody home. Hello.
Candace Owens is smart ass.
I was just looking to speak to whoever is at this property. Sir? Hello? I don't know if he's going to get someone. I see a very cute German Shepherd, it looks like.
This morning, I woke up to Candace Owens being outside of my house with a news crew.
Looks to be maybe in his mid-40s, white male, black hat, and he is, whoever he spoke to on the phone has instructed him to record us, which is strange because we just want to talk. And what I see in the driveway are 2 cars and a sign that says you are exactly where you are supposed to be.
She was demanding that I come outside.
Hi. Hello. Hi, you're welcome to record. I just want to talk. Are you instructed not to speak to anybody? We're not trying to harass you. We'll gladly leave. We're just wondering if we can speak to anybody. Sorry, what was that? Okay, I just thought this was a house for Black Lives Matter.
It's unacceptable and it's dangerous that anybody, any stranger, come outside of my house.
You're just trying to figure out if this house is actually being used for Black people in a creative space at all. And it doesn't seem that way.
What happened this morning is not safety. It's not what I deserve. It's not what any of us deserve.
I can't see how this purchase helped Black lives anywhere in America. I can't even find a Black life on the property. Okay, the dog's not even Black, so there's that.
And so they're literally trying to destroy us. They're trying to destroy me. They're trying to destroy the movement. And I just need us to be stronger.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. What could be more emblematic of Black Lives Matter than that? Playing the victim to the public, hoping that you can get sympathy and perhaps that sympathy will transform into dollars. And of course, after we exposed that lie, she subsequently wipes her Instagram and says that she needs a mental break and needs to reevaluate stuff. And what I'm hoping is that by the end of this, they'll wipe the entire organization in charity, because it is not what it seems. The real story is a story of addiction. That's it. That's actually a story that could have brought people together globally. This was a man that was high on drugs and went into a store with counterfeit bills. He sat in a car with his dealer. Obviously, they had drugs on them. Drugs were found on them. And I believe that in his final moments, when the police arrived, he ingested a lethal amount of drugs. And unfortunately, the paramedics and the medical attention that this person would have needed in the immediate never happened, never transpired. And it is a story of a man who overdosed in the end.
Something like that. Malcolm X is a very smart person when it came to media. Like, man, I don't follow what the media says.
The media
right
is your enemy. That is what I will say. And I believe that from the bottom of my heart after examining every corner of this case. The media scared the jury. The media scared even politicians into agreeing in lockstep. There's no other way to examine the media but to recognize that they were the enemy. And they're not going to stop being the enemy. People were deluded and people were lied to, and people should be angry. People should be rightfully angry that they acted the part of a marketing agency for what, in my opinion, is a complete fraudulent organization that uses black emotion and black pain to extort dollars from white America.
Which is all just
That's what happened.
Scam.
You were all lied to. That's the truth.
So it was basically a big old scam. There you go, George Floyd's roommate. No financial support whatsoever. They got more support from Candance Owens than they did from Black Lives Matter. And it's seen right here. Which I find that wrong, because the proof show that he overdosed on drugs instead of an actual officer killing him. Yeah, that was pretty good though. It tells the truth about George Floyd and tells the truth about Candance Owens. I mean, not Candance Owens, BLM. How much of a scam they were and shit. And what really happened. And what the media tried to cover up and all that crap. But anyways, yeah, that's a pretty good documentary. Like, so you can watch it at Rumble.com. Let's look up George Floyd and Candance Owens' name together. You can find it on there. If you want to watch it all on your screen, to check out yourself. And that'll be it for tonight. I'm gonna do some more stuff on this channel while I'm trying to find me a job so I get back to slots too. And probably do a couple more slot videos here and there on the other channel. But yeah, it was fun sharing that one. I'll do some type of follow up on this video soon. Anyways, for now, you guys have a good night. And I'll see y'all next time. Later.